but from the global markets.
Well, Kristine Berzina is Managing Director at the American public policy think tank, the German Marshall Fund North. Thanks for joining us. In terms of how this affects the Russian economy, are they simply selling their gas to other countries, or has it been damaging?
It is both damaging, but gas is also not the main picture. If you look at where the Russian gas has gone, then China, India, other world markets are buyers here too. But it's not so easy for Russia to simply turn off the spigots and send it in a different direction. It's not as though it's one cup with straws going in various directions. There are particular pipelines that go only to particular destinations. What Russia is doing now is liquefying some of that European-aimed gas in the past. And you do still have some exports going through across Ukraine and through the Turk Stream pipelines. But when you look at Germany in particular, it is not a market, and much of Europe is diversifying away. Now, gas isn't the major source of income for Russia. Oil is much bigger, but it is a very important one. So while gas prices right now have been incredibly high, anticipating this winter when they come down, as they are coming down right now, it means that Russia will no longer be able to make as much money as it has been, because the high cost of the gas has in some way been compensating for the smaller amount it has been selling. So more pain to come for Russia. We haven't seen the full picture yet.
Yeah, and Jens Stoltenberg, the NATO Secretary General, has done an interview with the BBC at Davos saying if the fighting stops, we won't start to buy cheap Russian gas again, because this conflict has taught us that it's dangerous to be dependent on authoritarian regimes like Russia for gas. But that raises questions about the other nations that the world, gets its supplies from.
Right. There is a question about how you choose to import your gas. If you look at where gas is coming to Europe right now, Qatar, the Emirates, Algeria, Norway, there are many sources. And I think that Europeans will hopefully now have learned to be much more discerning in their sources of gas. Is this a country from which you want to buy? This is a really big question in the future. But on Russian gas, we have a sense now that the tides have fully turned, but there is no particular guarantee. And so it's important that as Europe gets out of this particular winter, and should the conflict and the war in Ukraine come to an end, that there be a true reckoning. Does Europe ever want to buy Russian gas again? There have been bans and price caps on other fuels, but not on gas. Nord Stream is not functioning, but that's not to say that there aren't other pipelines, nor is that to say that more pipelines couldn't be built in the future. And so it's going to be a matter of discipline and choice. Has Europe learned from this particular conflict?
Well, Christina, just stay with us again for a few moments if you can, because we just want to bring in another aspect of all this, because the Ukrainian president has called for more speed in providing military assistance. President Zelensky told the World Economic Forum in Davos that tanks and air defense systems especially must be supplied quickly.
Mobilization of the world must outpace the next military mobilization of our joint enemy. The supplying of Ukraine with air defense systems must outpace Russia's next missile attacks. The supplies of Western tanks must outpace another invasion of Russian tanks. The restoration of security and peace in Ukraine must outpace Russia's attacks on security and peace in other countries.
Well, at the centre of debate in Davos are these Leopard 2 tanks. Berlin is facing pressure to send them to Kyiv, or at least approve their delivery from other countries. Here's what the Polish Prime Minister had to say on the issue.
We have clearly said that we commit to transferring up to 14 modern Leopard tanks, under the condition that these tanks will be also transferred by others. The German batch is very important in this regard. The largest country in Europe, in the European Union, the strongest economic country, cannot evade support for Ukraine.
Lithuania's Foreign Minister was more optimistic. He thought the tanks could be delivered to Kyiv soon.
The tanks, yes, I'm confident, because that's, that this is what I'm hearing here as well, talking with other leaders. Definitely there is a momentum. Unfortunately, that the momentum has formed after we've seen, again, horrendous civilian deaths.
Well, also on the sidelines of the World Economic Summit, NATO's Secretary General called for a significant increase in weapons at what he called a pivotal moment in the conflict.
I welcome that allies are stepping up. Germany has delivered significantly support to Ukraine with artillery, with ammunition, and also the advanced Patriot systems. And then some allies have also now announced that they're ready to deliver heavy battle tanks. So there is an ongoing consultations among allies.
Well, the German leader, also in Davos, said that Russia's aggression must fail, but he made no comment about supplying extra weapons. What he did say could hint at why Germany's been hesitating to supply tanks.
We will continue to do this as long as necessary. And whilst we are doing this and showing that the Ukrainians can rely on our support for their courageous fight, it is also clear that we will avoid that this is becoming a war between Russia and NATO.
The possibility of Kyiv getting new military hardware does not seem to concern President Putin. The Russian leader says he's in no doubt that Moscow will emerge victorious, or at least that's what he told factory workers in St. Petersburg earlier.
All this creates a foundation for our effective development and for victory. It is guaranteed. I have no doubt about it. There are certain things that never went away and which form the foundation of our victory. This is the unity and the solidarity of the Russian people.
Well, his comments come as Russia's top diplomat accused the West of a hybrid war against Russia. Interesting because the Kremlin has insisted on calling the conflict in Ukraine a special operation. He also spoke about that word, victory. Have a listen.
You know, the word war, I'm not afraid to say it, because what's going on is our answer. As the President has said, perhaps should have been given earlier. But the answer is not too late. This is important, against the hybrid war unleashed against us. This war is a slogan under which the West promotes its own agenda, and victory is a word that gives us hope.
Well, Kristine Berzina is still with me. Kristine, I just want to bring in a report from the Reuters news agency. They are quoting the Wall Street Journal, saying that Germany won't allow allies to ship German-made tanks to Ukraine to help its defence against Russia or send its own systems unless the US agrees to send its own tanks. So that is the Wall Street Journal citing senior German officials, and we are getting that from the Reuters news agency. So the BBC can't confirm that line. But, of course, it's a very interesting take. And, of course, we did see Mr. Scholz saying, voicing fears that this is, this could escalate completely into a NATO-Russia war.
Yes, well, we have heard now for a week or so this tit-for-tat question on the tanks. There's been hope that because the UK has sent its tanks already, or has announced that it would, that you would have also the Germans say, yes, let's step up, let's do this. However, it appears that Germany is in large part waiting on the United States. It doesn't feel confident that it wants to take any step before everybody else that matters to Germany has taken that step. And so there is this hesitation, which has been incredibly frustrating to the rest of the international community that supports Ukraine right now, which is why when we move towards later this week, the Ramstein Donors Conference, Lloyd Austin has just gotten on a plane and is headed towards Germany to Berlin for conversations that hopefully these details can be worked out. Can Germany step up in the way that its neighbors and allies really want it to, or must it be taken by the hand and must every decision be paired with a partner's equivalent decision? Is there such reluctance to do what is often seen as the right thing in Germany?
Well, I guess the question then is the US likely to donate any of its tanks or further military hardware? And isn't Germany correct to be cautious about escalation here?
I think it's very concerning to talk about escalation when an issue is how do you practically take back territory? What needs to happen in 2023 on Ukraine's side is to push the Russian troops out of Ukraine. They have been very good at stopping the offensive, but now it has to have the ability to fight backwards. Now, is that escalation or is that defense? And I think the fact that this is simply pushing back as opposed to opening new fields entirely, that is somewhat convoluted and confused in the discourse. So no, I do not believe this is escalatory. This is simply important for defense, for gaining back what was lost at the very beginning of this conflict. Now, there was a question also from you, David, on the whether the U.S. will give it. Yes, briefly, yes. So I don't have any insight for clearly on this, but when we look at the air systems, Zelensky today called specifically not only for tanks but for air defense systems. The U.S. announced the fact that it was going to give the Patriot first, which was immediately then also taken up by other allies. Germany, we have seen Canadians give NASAMS, and Netherlands are talking about giving a Patriot system as well. So the U.S. gave one thing and the others give more. This kind of pattern has worked well. I think it is possible we could see that, but again, no guarantees. And so many of those conversations will have to happen this week.
Kristine Berzina, many thanks. Stay with us on Outside Source, still to come.